righty. Thank you for joining us for podcast number 2. It's a pleasure, and we're here again. And we're off to the races. So the concepts that we're going to be talking about today, obviously we're going to have to touch upon the Super Bowl real quick. And then we're going to talk about Trump's parade that he's trying to get going. And then we're going to end with Prime Minister Trudeau and what he represents. Is it a problem? All right, so, and of course there will be other topics among them. So, I guess opening up, Kyle.
What's up? Go
Team
Birds,
one, baby.
Go Birds, baby. Wow. So, for the record, Mr. Gergat and I, we were in Philly for the whole celebration, witnessing the game the night before, and somehow I made it back to class at 10 a.m. Monday morning, so it was wild. For the game, though, shout out to the Eagles. That was much needed. City of Philadelphia, that was awesome. We'll talk about a little bit of how the city of Philadelphia celebrated. I'm not going to say if I was a fan of it or not, because I was there and it was fun. But there were some repercussions, I would say. And how do you feel about it?
Definitely. Well, I had a blast. It was a total thrill because I never have a team to root for in the Super Bowl. So I had a blast just sitting there enjoying watching good teams play. And the Patriots lost, which was even more spectacular.
Yeah.
So can't complain about that.
I've been an Eagles fan my whole life, so it meant a lot to me. And I'm just glad they won. I'm glad that they did it in such exciting fashion, too.
Right, and being able to witness it
pressure
in Philadelphia was absolutely amazing. Like,
yes, being in Philadelphia was like I took the GoPro that we're recording on down to Philly, and let's just say that I captured some cool moments, and I've watched them a zillion times since I've been back.
I mean,
so.
I can't imagine if I was a fan of any other team, I would have left Philadelphia alive. But I was in all my Browns gear, and I think because we've become such a joke that people just either thought I was a Philadelphia fan and just trolling the world, or they just felt bad for me and was like, this poor kid, you're a loser in and of itself, so why kick your ass? But it was a blast. I couldn't have picked a better way to celebrate the game, being in Browns gear. I was hugging people. I've
literally hugged so many people this past weekend. I don't know why, but they were brothers to me.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Which, it was just like when the Cavs won the championship. It becomes a family.
Let's talk about these people. I was in a bar, watched the whole game in the bar, watched Peterson receive the trophy, and then I hit Broad Street. And when I hit Broad Street, I could not move. We tried to walk from one intersection to the other. We couldn't. Cops were pushing by us because some dude was climbing the Broad Street telephone pole, and the next thing you know, there's a glass bottle flying by my head, and it was
got
wild.
Dangerous for sure.
It was dangerous, but that I would say that happens anytime.
Yeah, we rolled up. My buddy Ben took us, and we rolled up in his car. And we stayed at his buddy's house, and his buddy was like, "Oh, you're good to leave your car here." And he was like, "No, I'm definitely going to take mine to a parking garage." And his buddy's like, "No. You don't realize it's Gatz Street, which is parallel one block. Gratz, that's it.
Yeah.
1 block behind. It's that street that's going to be damned." And he's like, "No, I'm going to put mine in the parking garage." We came back to his place. It's maybe 2 o'clock in the morning.
This is North Philly, west of Temple's campus.
The street exactly where his car was going to be. Every car, the windows smashed in, the ceiling of the car absolutely collapsed. I remember looking outside the window, and some guy is going to get in. Like, one, you're definitely not sober at this point. It's 2 in the morning, and your team just won. 2, the ceiling was so crushed in. The dude is driving his car with his head out his window, just like trying to steal. It was danger.
It was danger. Also, when I woke up at 6:30. I walked and picked my car up. When I was driving down the street I was staying at, I was driving over piles of trash. It just seemed like an excuse to just wreck Philly, but the Eagles won a Super Bowl, so
right.
I can't complain. I'm hoping everyone's down there cleaning up, helping the city of Philadelphia clean up.
The one thing you got to give them,
the parade looked great.
Is the next day they hit it.
Yeah,
quick.
They had it.
Like
Broad Street was up and running by 6. I want to say 6 a.m. because when I was there at 6:30, traffic lights were fine. There was nothing on the streets. But the night before, I saw a dance party break out on Broad Street. So I don't really know how to take it. Like, that's impressive to the Philadelphia police to stand there and let all the maybe laws be broken.
We showed up back at Ben's buddy's place, and outside on that same street, there's a burning couch, and there's these guys coming out down the side street with another couch on their head, and they threw it in, and this huge, massive group is around they're just all screaming the Birds song, Fly, Eagles, Fly. I never even knew that song existed.
Great song.
And then the fire truck and these cops came rolling up to put the fire out, and so one of the parties just started bumping, bad boys, what you gonna do? It was so funny.
It was perfect. I saw some cops high-five people. I saw some cops shout F Tom Brady. There's a bunch, but they kept everyone safe that night.
The real show was after you got your fix of the craziness.
Yep.
We stopped to get a burger at the Checkers right there in the center of town.
Oh, yep.
That is where that was like the people of Walmart.
I was walking by a gas station, and the people stopped us and said, "Hey, this gas station's lit. You got to come in here." I've never heard that. They were the nicest people.
This gas station's
Everyone
lit.
in Philadelphia that night was very nice and very awesome. I'm glad you were there to celebrate with me.
But I would have been stabbed had they lost. That I'm not going to take away from
that. No, if they lost, that city would have been burnt to the ground, I'm pretty sure, with the amount of people there.
But today, they get to celebrate with their parade.
Today, they took a Philly parade down Broad Street.
They had it playing at school today. It was a big day for a lot of people here.
So,
that note, that could be a good transition.
Yeah. So, another parade we're going to talk about.
The good old Trump parade coming our way.
Yeah.
So Trump announced that he wants to do a military flex like, Kim Jong-un does and like they used to do in the 60s and back in the day when we were a more war-stricken planet. But he wants to do a military flex, show what we got. And I don't know. How do you feel about it, Kyle?
I mean, I think if Trump were to pay for it out of his own pocket, let's fucking do it. I don't see the point in using the taxpayer money, for instance, and I just think it's a misuse of allocations when there are more serious problems going on in the country. And now, going off of that, I do think it's putting our cards on the table for these other countries, saying, listen, like, you may have these parades and you may show off these warheads or nuclear warheads, whatever they show in these tanks, but if they roll our military out, we have the biggest, baddest motherfucking military in the world.
Well, we just increased our military spending to $80 billion. Yeah. So,
what's an extra $200 million?
Is it $200 million when the nuke is already made? Now you're just trampling it through New York.
It's
Plus, where are you
going to
pick it? Like,
it's going on Pennsylvania Avenue, dude. They got to shut down D.C. to get. But
it's insane.
Yeah.
Plus, you got to imagine the pussy hat protests that would come of it and everything else. But it's just funny that at the same time though, all he did say was this is something he wanted to do. He never took a step forward in enacting it. This is just another, Facebook post that ties Trump to Hitler, like he's a Nazi because look at this, look, he's just like Kim Jong-un. All right, at the same time though, now I was having a discussion with my one friend, and I was very skeptic and wasn't a big fan of this because I think it just sends the wrong message. I think it's conceding in being a regime that we don't stand for or ever will be. But at the same time, he did make the good point that it is something cool that you want to see. When you have the most expensive military and the largest military bought by millions, I mean, you want to see it. It's there. It's involved in every other country. Why not show it to us in our own backyard? So I think there's some value to that, but at the same time, like I said, I think it does send a message that totally outweighs me wanting to sit in my living room and just see it on NBC.
Yeah, I mean,
Google search the image if you want to see it that bad.
Going to North Korea and Kim Jong-un, and he has these parades, and what if every military vehicle he has on that parade is all their military is?
Well,
is this just calling his bluff? Maybe?
Well, no, that's exactly. Yeah. It's one of two theories. There's two theories going on why Kim Jong-un does this. He either does it because he's this tiny little island and he's trying to flex, like, hey, don't mess with me, I'll actually blow you up. or he knows that he doesn't have anything, and that with the flick of a finger, he's just like the bug he is, and with that, he needs to work even harder to show, hey, I hope they don't call my bluff, but hey, we're pretty tough over here, and we don't know, but there's just as much of a chance that these are all fake, just a show, and it's all just a ploy. But in recent times, we're starting to realize it's more real than we thought.
And because President Trump is our president, and we respect that, he has received backlash already.
Really?
There's two things I'm going to mention. Okay. One is legislation. The legislation is called Preparedness Before Parades Act, and under the bill, this is from the Washington Examiner, a large-scale military parade will require approval from the Defense Secretary and the municipal government where the event is planned. It would only proceed if the executive office of the president at least paid 50% of the parade costs. So that's one, having the office of the president fund it. But then here's an even larger one.
Well, what's there to fund? At the same time, these people making the argument, I want them to tell me how much it costs.
I mean, I just don't believe that they store military vehicles in D.C. There's got to get people to bring them there. You have to load them, unload them. You have to set up the parade.
Entire country.
You have to have defense.
Hold on. But to say that there is no base in D.C. would be ludicrous. We're not talking about the middle of a cornyard in Kentucky.
No.
We're talking about the capital of the most powerful country.
There's police there, but when you bring all these
not police, we're talking. Oh, there's a military in D.C.
Yes, but that military has to sit there and protect everything they're bringing there. So how much more military do you really need?
I'm not exactly.
But so second point, he's received backlash from Republican senators, and he's a Republican, as we know. I just want to throw this out there. The largest backlash, I think, is from Robert O'Neill, and Robert O'Neill is the former Navy SEAL who claims to have killed Osama bin Laden. He thinks quoted, a military parade is third world bullshit. So I think that's backlash from your own military. I just think that shows enough that on the inside, we know we have the biggest military. If Kim Jong really wants to call our cards.
I don't think it's a Kim Jong-un thing.
No.
For him it is.
Yes.
For him it is. I think the people that, it took the course of the day, but I've definitely warmed up to my buddy's perspective where it's just like, I can see, where's the harm in it that isn't political? Like I keep saying, the message that it sends, we are acknowledging these types of regimes, that we find value in this kind of show, that speaks more volumes than the substantive argument of okay, now he has to go through hoops to the same, like your argument about these parades and stuff. The man can just go, send them to the desert, we're taking them out, and they just go. I don't care what it costs, they're just being sent over there. But we're going to make them jump through hoops to make that same shit that we're sending over to Afghanistan. We're going to make them jump through hoops so we could take it down Manhattan, down the middle of D.C.
Here's a cost-saving alternative. I'm going to propose. All right, one question, and then, would you go to this parade?
I don't think I would watch it.
Yeah.
If it was manageable, if I'm here, and it turns out that it's only a 2-hour drive, maybe,
That's
and
fair.
if I had people to go with, but I really would not want to.
Instead of showing off our nuclear warheads and our tanks and everything, I say you organize a parade of a bunch of veterans and a bunch of people who've served, walk them through D.C. I would go to that.
And I would be
there in a heartbeat. That would be so cool. I'd be able to thank everyone who served this country.
But that's just Memorial Day. But what's funny is my buddy's argument for wanting this was he's like, do it on Veterans Day, do it on 4th of July. This is something that, this is for veterans to appreciate, for people of the military community. So at the same time, that's his argument for who would watch it, but I'm with you. I'd rather see that.
I guarantee, and that's just to pay respects and to show these people have put themselves on the line for our country, and that's a parade I think everyone should be at. And even if you got 35, 40 veterans rolling down a tank on Pennsylvania Ave, that's just cool. They know how to use that, and I wouldn't feel I would feel 10 times safer around that.
I totally agree. I think
And those
that's where
people,
our
they
value
deserve
is.
that. They really, if that's where 200 million went, I would fully support it because they deserve
Where
it.
are you getting this number?
I made that up.
Yeah, I know. So I just had to ask.
But what do you think it would cost?
The funny thing is, I've gone through 3 different sources here. Now, of course, they're all taking a liberal perspective, but nobody has a number,
No one does.
which is hilarious.
But I'm
to
just
me.
saying,
Because I don't think there's going to be a cost, but the way the
Cargo.
lines are blurred in our
Yeah.
military spending, in the retrospect of the system, it really doesn't cost
I
any
just-
money because that money's
between
spent.
blocking off DC, security, transportation,
But okay, here, just
but it's
reasoning
also
by-
an economic boost to DC.
but reasoning by analogy. Take someone like Miami University, my undergrad.
Ohio.
they-
Miami, Ohio. Yeah.
Yes, they get enough, like they get X $1 million every year from the government because they're a public school and they meet all the requirements. Well, at the same time, if you get given the grant and you don't spend that money, you don't get it the next year. So Miami University sure as hell finds something to
Yeah.
spend millions of dollars on. Same thing goes for we just raised the military budget $20 billion. That doesn't mean, well, if we save, we don't, no. That means $80 billion every year is being taken out of the national budget and is going to it. Whether it's spent on parades or whether it's spent on invading sand dunes, like, that money is going to be spent, and they sure as hell will find places to spend it, like in, Dick Cheney's military corporate mogul. Like, they'll find places to spend it in.
Oh yeah.
And so I just think that that's also an interesting concept is like, really are we spending money? Just like, does a tree make a noise if no one's there to hear it fall? Well, any philosopher will tell you that it doesn't. But there's a legitimate philosophical debate there because does it? I mean, it does make a sound, but no one hears it. So what's a sound, right? At the same time, are we really spending money? If that money's going to be spent, if that money is like, if it wouldn't be there regardless, maybe as a populace, you're getting more out of that dollar by getting to see a show. At least when I go see Wicked on Broadway, like, I spent money, like a heck of a lot of money, but at least I got to see the show. If I'm going to be spending my tax dollar, when you get a cut from
Yeah.
your paycheck every month,
Well, now we do get that.
right? Like, your heart aches. At least, let me see the nuke that I'm buying, so I see the value in it. Again, I agree with you though. That
Yeah.
this
I
was
mean,
not something I was calling for.
And also the legislation, the Preparedness Before Parades Act, hasn't passed yet, so that's technically not even a thing, but it's in the process. I just think so far backlash is iffy. My estimate, I guess, $200 million to fund this parade, at least, just between security, getting everything there, having it roll out, and you're going to have to protect it in some way more than you protect a regular parade with just Trump in it.
Right.
For instance. So I think there's a lot of cost to it, but I said, if he wants to fund
More
that,
political.
cool.
Mine is there's political
Yes,
cost.
and there's definitely going to be
Big time.
a bunch of hoops we'll have to jump through.
The
but
way it makes you look as a nation. If you want to be the police of the world, if you want to be the example, don't take the step backwards into, if you're the example and you're going, these are the examples of what you shouldn't be, but then you start acting militarily like them, you've already started a contradiction and you're taking steps backwards. And I think that's the biggest point. So, if we're going to, the transition here is, Trump is putting us in a dangerous spot because the dude just acts. He just tweets, he just does whatever. Yeah. And, while my buddy alongside Trump are just excited about, the face value of things, I think we need these world leaders need to understand that there's a much greater effect on the world unit.
I just think if we were to have the parade and you look back, let's say 40 years from now, well, what does that parade mean?
Nothing. Not a dang thing. I look back
you stroll
to
some tanks through D.C., good for you.
Right.
Stroll every veteran we've had ever, or not, every now living veteran, put them on a parade in D.C., that's, I think, the right route to go.
I was thinking,
and that's my final
point.
point.
I'm thinking of the Cavs parade, that was the most one, it's forgotten and done. Like you were saying, what value does it have today?
Oh yeah, I guess who remembers the Eagles parade? Probably a couple days.
Right.
Sorry,
exactly. No. Also, fun point. The Cavs got like 1.3 million. The Eagles today got over 3 million people there. Goes to show the value in football over basketball.
Yeah.
Hence why we need the Browns to step up. They're gone. But back to
maybe they trade for Nick Foles.
They need to. Let's be honest. We need.
They have a first.
No, because we just destroy
they have
franchise
2 first-round
quarterbacks
picks,
like it's their favorite pastime.
But you don't have to build this one. Sorry,
But like you were saying about like the parade, the only things that I do remember about it, while it was great experience, you're living the high of winning. That was the most miserable day of my life. I was there for 12 hours in 100-degree weather, just crammed on top of people with no water. People are peeing on each other. It was beyond miserable. People would start getting in fights, and we'd be like, yo, hey, police. It would take them like 25 minutes to get through the crowd to get there. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So what do I remember for it? It was miserable. I mean, there's no value. There's no value in this kind of stuff.
So, last point. Veterans,
so, talking
if you
about
do a parade,
yeah,
I'll be there.
I'll be there. Yeah, just wait until July, baby. When the weather's nicer, we'll be there. Yeah. So talking about a world stage and how these leaders have an effect on it all, this is like the big debatable question. I guess I genuinely want to preface with the fact that like this is all to just get different perspectives and play devil's advocate and argue. This does in no way reflect genuinely how we feel, even though it might coincide a bit. So, the question, does someone like Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada,
elected by the people,
and the movement he represents, cause more issues than good? And is it a problem?
Now, before we start, I'm going to say Alex has points to make, and I'm just going to kind of sit back, intake. I have counter arguments ready, but we're just going to let this play out. He's going to divulge some information. I'm going to hit him with some questions.
We're going to present a stance, and then we're going to hear Kyle's, and then we're going to do some questioning. So, I guess that there's 2 points that this, or not 2 points, but the 2 concepts that this whole case rests on. The foundation is that Trudeau is not a bad guy, and it isn't to take away that there's probably good intentions. There's certainly good intentions in everything he does. But while there is a good side to him, that isn't to neglect, a bad side to him also. You need to acknowledge the good side, where his whole goal is to make a kinder, more progressive, more inclusive country. But he also promotes social justice warrior values that is nothing more, in this, the promotion of these social justice warrior values is where lies my 3 contentions on where he may be a world problem. So it begins with how this social justice warrior movement is nothing more than a movement to silence and control. And this is huge to me because we live in a world today, like we talked about last week, how everybody's just looking for a new way to censor and silence their neighbor. I don't like hearing that. You have to stop talking. No. You don't have to listen is really what it comes down to. What happened to freedom of speech if I can't sit here and say something that's provocative that you don't like? You don't have to like it. But I also don't have to say something you do like. So on that, his big stance that he's really pushing today is these gender pronouns, which is just absolutely asinine to me. And he pushed these standards through legislation where now you have to use, there's no standard nomenclature for non-binary types. So we don't know how, there's no way of measuring this. It's all subjective. It all comes down to, this is how I want to be spoken about at this time for me. And now if you're going to add legislation to that says if somebody wants to be called Z, Xi, Zik, ABC, Apple Q, like if you don't refer to them as Z instead of he or her, you can face jail time. Like, that is ridiculous. I couldn't imagine coming up to someone who had a hell of a good surgery, became what they wanted to be, male, female, whatever, and you accidentally called them the wrong thing, you assuming devil, and then they throw you in jail or slap you with a fine, where's the freedom in that? I'm not saying don't respect these people. That's exactly what you should be doing, and that's what Justin's trying to push. You know, Trudeau wants you to respect these people. I totally agree with this stance, but at the same time, don't hold me legally accountable, because it's language. Like, holding somebody accountable during the mercy of language. I mean, the fact that there's 70 plus, we don't even have a number of how many different non-binary nomenclatures there are, that we have 70 plus, and at what point, if we don't have a list of terms, that if you don't say this, this, and this, if something exceeds that list, and you could still hold me accountable, or like in jail, like, at what point do you draw the line and say, you know, what if I just didn't like my neighbor? And I was like, I want to take him out because he didn't call me Burr, and that's what I want to be called now. And I just made it up today. So, on top of that, building off of how the man is only just trying to do good, he still isn't doing good enough for these people, because he came forth to the Parliament and gave it, and it reached America for sure. I definitely saw it when it came out, and he gave an apology to the LGBTQ2S community. They added a couple there. So he was speaking to this group, and he was crying because of the injustices his government has brought them over the evolution of mankind. Now, granted, they have legal gay marriage and everything, so it's not like they are at now where they were for what he was apologizing for. But that's a whole different can of worms. He was genuine in his effort, and the man was crying, because that's how soft and hurt this man is in this issue. And here's a title of the article describing the situation. Justin Trudeau's government continues to discriminate against transgender people. His apology means nothing. Although we acknowledge the recent trans legal gains to which the liberal government has contributed, we also denounce the lack of efforts to solve the urgent issues that continue to affect the most precarious and stigmatized members of our community. Still isn't enough. The man's crying. We're going to throw people in jail for not using the proper Z, Xi, A, B, C, T key, like any of that. And that still isn't enough. Not only is it just saying, it's not like the position of these social justice warriors are, we appreciate what you're doing, and what you're doing is beneficial, but no. What it is it isn't enough. It isn't enough. It isn't enough. At what point is it enough? Did you hear about the new recent law that was passed in Canada, where if you as a parent are approached by their child at the youngest it could be is 3 years old, so we're talking a 3-year-old, the second the 3-year-old tells you that they did, even in the slightest, think they might identify as the other sex, you immediately have to put them on puberty inhibitors, or you get to lose your kid. And then at the point at which they define themselves at the other sex, if you don't immediately start putting them on hormones and start changing that, then you lose your kid. Now, I think that the point here is we need to acknowledge that other people have other opinions. And for your rhetoric to be, you need to accept my opinion whether you like it or not. But then to go on and say, I also don't have to accept you not liking my opinion. You have to accept mine. That is the contradiction of equality at its root. So for you to say, you know, as you as a parent, the second my kid does that, I want to do it. That is your choice. But to take away my ability to make a choice in raising my kid is just ludicrous. How could we deny the fact that we have a second like we have a second legal system for juveniles because we acknowledge the fact that the brain is nowhere even near developed till 18, and it surely isn't even halfway done until 21, and it's usually not done until your mid-20s, late 20s. So that being the case, how could we say that these kids are in any position to know? We all experiment growing up. We're all confused about our sexuality and what we like and what things mean to us. But if we don't acknowledge that that could be a phase and start really having lifetime effects on these humans, we don't even know the long-term effects of these things because we haven't even started them. Like we are just doing it today, so we don't know what a 50-year-old man who stopped taking or started taking puberty inhibitors so he could get his wiener slit inside out. Like, we don't know that what that has on the brain, what it has on the heart. Like, who knows what it has on the long-term effects. And so I guess with the law of this whole entire thing, it's dangerous because now we start seeing it. It's not just Canada being crazy up north and just living in their own liberal utopia. We are also now seeing it travel down into New York, where we have New York, the employment EEOC ruled that businesses and landlords need to start abiding by the non-binary types standards set by Canada. So now you could be held legally liable in a business contract or a tenant-landlord contract because it doesn't have the right nomenclature, as if that was on purpose. Like we're sitting here trying to troll the world. Heaven forbid somebody make an accident. We got some, and just kind of the where's the line drawn? You know, another thing I forgot to mention, the 70+ binary types also includes animal kin. I promise you heard that right. That means these are people who really believe they're in the wrong body and should have been born in the form of an animal, i.e., this also, so we're talking an elf, or a fox, a kangaroo, but this also includes an elf or a fairy or a pixie. And now that we're going to hold you legally accountable to call them as such, where do you draw the line at you might, I'm real sorry, you might have a mental sickness, and it might be in a social benefit to investigate it. Not saying you are, but maybe we should try to do some neuroscience here and try to get to an idea of what is a like, at what point do we go, you're right, this is out of your control and we need to accept it, and it's out of your control, but it's messed up? Because at some point now, pedophiles are going to start coming out and go, well, it isn't my fault, like, it's out of my control. I want to touch these little boys. Like, you can't throw me in jail. You have to accept me, and you have to start calling me pedo sir, because I cannot control the fact that I'm into little boys. For some reason, as a society, we can hold the stance that that's screwed up, and we will not stand for it. But we're not going to stand by, like, we're going to hold your average Joe mechanic accountable for not calling the elf Zer. Like,
so here we go. So I'm going to jump in. I understand, like, many points, and that's so many, non-binary types. At one point, you can call me a he, and I'm fine with that. And if you mess that up, I really don't care.
What if I called you she?
Sure. But
should I go to jail?
I think Trudeau, and now what's rubbing off on America, is it's inclusive. We want to give these people that have not had their chance to speak the chance to come out and say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do. But at the same time, they can't hold us accountable for something we don't know anything about. We don't know if they were born as a Z or a Xi. We don't know that, but they can tell I was born as a male. And how am I supposed to know when we go out in public? I just won't know. And I don't mean to call you by the wrong gender. I don't mean to call you by the wrong binary type. But that's so many that we have to be accountable. But at the same time, I want them to know that that's who they're allowed to be. Doesn't bother me. They can come out and identify as that. That's their choice. But I can't be held accountable for not knowing. I'm just not going to simply know 70 non-binary types of people. But at the same time, um, Justin Trudeau is creating this atmosphere that allows these people to come out and be, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, this is how I want to live my life. And for Canada and Justin Trudeau, that's something they're pushing. That's an agenda they're pushing. They want to be all inclusive, and I think they're good for them. You know, bring them in there, let them be who they want to be. But at the same time, they really need to be, I want to say, careful, because legislation that would put me in jail for the wrong pronunciation of a non-binary type, like I that's not how I grew up. I'm like, and I mean nothing against these people, but it's got to be the same way. Like you know what I am, and if I don't know what you are, please tell me. Don't backlash. I really don't care. That's who you are. But for the point of silencing and trying to control the nation, I just think he's trying to allow people who once did not have a voice, who once could not be who they are, and now they are who they are.
Right.
And so good for them for making that decision. If you want to identify as the animal or the Z or the Zi, or even he to she, it's your choice.
Right.
But I can't be held accountable.
I guess we'll just do this one topic, and
Yeah.
we'll just do
The sub point.
the three
Yeah.
contentions separately. So, I agree with what you're saying, and what's really cool, and this should be praised, is how Justin Trudeau is the lead. Like, he is a political leader with the most inclusiveness of females in a political system
Yes.
in history. And he is so proactive in making sure that at the very least it's even. And at that point it makes sense. You know, it should reflect your population. Yeah. So that makes sense. And those are the things that deserve praise.
Now, if he wants to bring, let me jump in quick, I think this is a good point. If you have your non-binary types, you have the he and the she, which he ensured gender-based impact analysis in his cabinet making decisions. He also, like you said, includes an equal number of men and women in the cabinet. Should we start to include our Z's and our Z's? Because is that...
No, because what's the percentage of the population? Like, we are letting these people have a voice the size of the majority when they're maybe 2%. What percent of people do you know are elves? I'll wait. Yeah. So, considering that, like, at what point do you draw the line? I mean, I give the man praise for the righteous efforts. You know, when you're fixing a system that is cracked.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, when you're giving a presentation and a woman raises her hand and she asks you a question and you have to interrupt her in the middle of her question to point out, no, you have to correct her. No, it isn't mankind, it's people kind. You're such a, like, loony feminist that you... Come on. Like, you know what this woman means by mankind, and you have to correct her for the sake of principle. What principle are you preserving with that? So there's a constant conflict. Another cool, like, good, quick story is, you know, we need to keep the utilitarian concept that we are a society as a whole, and we can't lose the vision of the humanity. We're so consumed with individuals and individual problems and how my group is marginalized and wronged that we ignore that we are one giant tribe. And when you have people who want to hold legally accountable, you know, I'm gender fluid. I don't know what I am. You know, I was watching a video of an individual, this person, who said her biggest struggle in life is that when she goes to Target, this is her thing. When I go to Target, I have the biggest problem. I have to look at what I'm wearing today when it's time for me to pick the bathroom and decide, am I more like a boy today or am I more like a girl? That is a sad problem that people have to deal with. But it also doesn't take away from the fact that that's a you problem. Not a me problem, that's a you problem. Now, I'm not going to ignore the fact that sex is a social construct. But that's exactly what it is. It's a social construct for humans to interact with each other. This is just a piece of human interaction. It wasn't constructed to villainize humans, even though, we can look at, gender biases throughout history and show that it was. That wasn't its purpose. You had gatherers and camp tenders, and then you had hunters, and that's kind of where
that's where it
gender
started.
bias divided. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a social construct that you're wasting time fighting. When we were talking about how we have poison in Michigan and we have people starving in our country, like, what are we doing concerning ourselves with what bathroom? If I was in a bathroom and you walked in, I genuinely don't care. But real quick, the purpose of the social construct, keeping in mind this individual story, I have a story of when I was taking the LSAT. I took the LSAT twice. Take the LSAT the first time, and the staircase going up to the classroom that I took the test in, on either side, on the left it had a girls' bathroom, on the right it had a guys' bathroom. I go to take the test the second time, 6 months later, and I go to take it. I go to the bathroom real quick like I normally would, and okay, this is gender neutral. What's the other one? So I go over that one. That one's gender neutral too. Funny story though is when I came out of out of my test, my dad was telling me the story of how when he went to the bathroom, granted he went to Case Western, so this was his school, and he knew where he was at. He goes into the bathroom, which used to be the guy's bathroom, and while he's peeing, some 20-year-old girl comes walking in, and he had the most awkward encounter ever. Now, my dad has a daughter. He's he's probably nicer than any fly you'll ever meet. He's not a danger. But what totally fuels the feminist movement, and the same liberal that fights for gender-neutral bathrooms will be the first to say that men are assholes and will rape a girl and is a disgusting pig, but we need to jam them in the same bathroom together. My dad needs to, at 50-some years old, needs to have that encounter with a young girl with, so back to why, hate the social construct or not, it has a purpose, and it serves a social purpose for the whole. No one said you needed to abide by it. There's no cops sitting outside the bathroom waiting to slap handcuffs on you because you used the girls' bathroom. Nobody's enforcing it. You might have a couple looks come your way, but judging by it, you're probably used to it.
I'm just going to throw some public policy out here. Male and female bathrooms, usually, for school, you can fit 4 people in the male bathroom at Widener Commonwealth. And I say if you change this to a gender-neutral bathroom, it's probably going to have to be single-use. I'm going to have to wait in line. Not to say, I just don't want to wait in line.
No,
the male, female, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
You know what? Maybe at school you do wait in line.
Yeah.
But at what point do we not wait in lines? We have troughs that at a baseball game. Am I allowed? I'm waiting at the football game. Do you know how long it takes to go pee at a Browns game? It is insane. Now have them all individual cubbies that they can only use one at a time, and it isn't a trough of drunk men climbing over each other. That's not only going to double the time, but at what point are we
not even the female bathroom too?
Right.
They take.
Hell, if I was a girl, I'd be mad because have you ever been in a girl's bathroom? It's not like I'm strutting through there all the time, but it's the cleanest thing in the world. At least I'm assuming. A girl's bathroom is not a guy's bathroom. So if I was a girl and I got piss on the seat, toilet paper everywhere, just the smell alone, instead of daisies and tulips, yeah. So at what point do you draw the line is really what
I just think I'm very open to being inclusive. I want you to be who you are. I want you to have the same opportunity I had as whoever you choose to be. But at the same time, there's a construct that I am who I am, and maybe I want to use the male's bathroom.
Right.
And you can use, and I understand there's no option to you. So we're going to put in these gender-neutral bathrooms, like University of Pittsburgh at Johnson. They put in a gender-neutral bathroom, and that's going to be accompanying for the 67 other binary types besides male, female, and yours. So at one point, be who you are. I want you to be who you are, but right now, there's not much we can do about it.
Right, genuinely. And So the overarching contention here was that this is nothing more than a movement to silence and control. I would definitely amend that and say there is more to it than this, but we can't deny that when someone like me wants to speak on this subject, or just in any way, any person, it isn't a white straight male, it's the opposite of me, and they want to talk on this subject but not hold this perspective, first off, a white straight male is not allowed to talk on this subject, which is a total problem in and of itself. But moving past that, it doesn't change the fact that this isn't a movement to, okay, I want to hear why you want to keep a guy in girls' bathroom, and I want you to hear why I don't, and me and you could try to maybe come to an understanding. That's not it. It's shh, 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 stop. Stop. I don't care what you have to say. This is how it is. You actually aren't allowed to say because you're racist, or you're not allowed to say because you're privileged. Whatever it is, you're silenced and shut up because you aren't me. You aren't the marginalized person, so you clearly could have no social understanding at all. As if I've taken like me, the other, has taken a sociology course in my life. Switch
back to Justin Trudeau. Good for him for creating a society like that. There's a lot of people that may have been displaced because they just couldn't come out. I don't want to say come out, but they couldn't embrace what they were born as. And I mean, for me, I just grew up. That's all it was. And so for Trudeau to go out here and say, we're going to create this gender-neutral society, and we're going to make sure men and women are equal.
So on that, you do think it's good that people are going to jail?
I don't think it's good that people are going to jail, because how can I know?
Well, that contradicts the point you just said, though.
But
you can't sit here and praise him for what he's done and then villainize him for that exact same thing.
For creating the gender-neutral society.
But that gender-neutral society is putting people in concrete cages.
But gender-neutral society,
that
not
he
the
created.
Legislation.
Right.
Yeah. I don't agree with the legislation. Because like I said earlier.
So how is that not created by him?
The gender-neutral society?
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
So how is the effect, the legislation of the gender-neutral society not...
So the legislation, I believe, is totally different than saying, hey, we're open, you who you are. But once you hold me accountable for not knowing what you are, that's taking it too far.
So here, we both can agree on the fact that he's right in standing up for these people.
Yes.
And the conceptual stance that he's holding isn't a problem until that same stance stands for putting the other in a concrete cell.
Now,
because that is something he stands for.
Yes.
Like,
but to that point, if someone walks up to me and calls me a she or a Z or
whatever you want it to be,
whatever
elf, pixie,
I'm not going to put you in jail. You just simply don't know what I identify as.
Oh, why is that though? It's because the world has made you have a callous skin and understand that the world isn't yours.
No.
And you live with other humans.
I do. I'm going to respect what they want.
But for some reason, they don't have that same concept. And that's where
I just think that's why...
lies. That's why they want you in jail for accidentally saying Z instead of Zer. As if,
you know
that
what? I'm
came
just
out.
not going to talk to him at that point.
Oh, let's be honest.
I just can't.
I guess now I'm going to skip over B, go to C, and we'll come back. Because if we're going to take the stance that what he's doing is right and good and, dandies and tulips, the next point is that he doesn't even know where his lines are drawn to the point where he becomes a living contradiction. And he stands for good. That's like, Batman versus Superman, that movie came out, right? Like, they both stand for good, but what was the theme of that movie? That even the good has bad within them, and there's always a battle between good and evil, and that embodies this contradiction to the T. So for me, the basis is, he's nothing more than just a pretty figurehead who has been influential, but serves better as an Instagram motivational speaker than somebody who controls the world dealings. And one of the things is he he's a giant hypocrite for telling people, where's it at? Regardless, I know this one. He sits there and criticizes the United States, our social policies, the opposing political parties of his. He just always criticizes one perspective and really is the biggest critic of the United States. One of the criticisms was how we aren't letting in refugees. And when that whole thing unfolded, he was going, we have refugees, you guys do not. And was really hanging his hat on that. But now he's under fire because he isn't letting Canadian refugees back in. So Canadians were leaving and joining ISIS, and he won't let them in because they were they're Canadians who left. But he's going to stand there and criticize the United States for not letting in any refugees as he lets in the people who were the same terrorist but didn't leave Canada. They were just stuck there. It's like, wait a second, let's break this down. You can't let these people in because they used to be from Canada, went and joined ISIS, or just left the country to the Middle East and is coming back as a refugee. They're not allowed into the country. However, the people who are never a Canadian citizen, never paid taxes into the government, never was involved in his society, they're allowed to come in because we feel bad for them, and it gives us a way to say the United States are doing it wrong. So I just find that funny. He's under fire for being a giant environmental hypocrite. This is pretty funny, how he pushes at the Paris climate talks for this way tougher than expected goal of holding the planet's rise in temperature to only 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. This means nothing if you keep digging up more carbon and selling it to the people to burn. Like, as you continue to do that, you're contradicting yourself. He's pushing for pipelines through Canada and the U.S. to carry more oil out of the Alberta's tar sand, the Alberta's tar sands, which is one of the greatest climate disasters on the planet right now. This is Trudeau. When he was asked about the contradiction, he's like, no country would find 173 barrels of oil in the ground and just leave it there. Okay. But according to the Oil Change International Institute, the burning of these fuels that they're about to sell, that they just harvested, of the carbon will account for 30% of the carbon necessary to take us past the 1.5 degrees Celsius target set in Paris. So what does this mean? This means that Canada, which represents 1.5% of the planet's population, is claiming the right to sell the oil that will use up 1/3 of the Earth's remaining carbon budget. But we're going to sit here at the Paris climate talk and destroy China and hold everybody else accountable and try to prevent other people from furthering oil deals. But we just stumbled across this, so we better tear it up, better not leave it there. But at the same time, I know Kyle pointed this out to me earlier, he did spend $200 million in natural resource technology and advancement. So he's trying to better climate change and renewable resource, but at the same time, he's the same greedy fiend that's going to take what he can and be a politician. It's a money game.
Also, 3 other points to Trudeau's climate change. This is also, it's called the Trudeau meter. We'll have it in the bottom. He attended the Paris Climate Conference, with 90 days formally met to establish a pan-Canadian framework for combating climate change. He canceled Northern Gateway Pipeline and created a new low-carbon economy trust. So, I mean, that point kind of rattled.
Wait, is that the things he didn't do?
Yes.
So we can't ignore that he didn't phase out the fossil fuel industry like he wanted. What's this other one?
Redo the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion review.
Oh, so instead of reviewing the expansion, we just continued to expand it.
And the orange
cool.
ones are in progress. But off of that, I think he's been flip-flopping on things ever since he started being a politician. For one, this is the topic that might blow some brains, but it's called marijuana and marijuana legislation in Canada. In 2012, Justin Trudeau, he didn't support it, but now in 2015 and now leading up to 2018, they pushed for legalization of marijuana in Canada, and they have started dispensaries, and those dispensaries are up and running, and the legislation hasn't passed, but they're selling it. Now, on the same point, Justin Trudeau, in the article from, it's Canadian News, we'll put in the link below too, he also said he wouldn't decriminalize it. But he pushed for legalization because his brother was arrested for a small amount back in 2003. So, to that point, I think my point is that I change my opinion on things over time. I think as we progress as humans in our lives and who we are, we believe in different things as we grow older.
It's called learning.
Maybe he did learn that there was some opportunities for him, but at the same point,
point,
wow.
How much of it is, you have someone like Hillary Clinton who goes her entire political existence and life opposing gay marriage, but the second that's what's going to push her over the edge and become the first female president, she flips right when her candidacy begins.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
I mean, he's just, but also for this point, he's a prime minister. He represents all of Canada, correct?
Yeah.
Maybe his contradictory opinion could be
is to appeal to more people.
Is to appeal to more people and not to push his own personal agenda, but to push what is right for Canada. So he may feel that taking that oil out of the ground wasn't necessary, but for Canada,
it was.
To pull it out, send it, and sell it, they're making money.
Hey, that's exactly it.
So maybe,
but if you're going to be the mannequin for the store, do you wear coats and snow pants when you're selling shorts and T-shirts inside? No. Also, just another one that came out recently during Christmas. He violated 4. Here, sorry, let me pull it up real quick, just so I. So he violated 4 conflict laws according to his ethics commissioner. And her biggest gripe was, literally, if he came to me and told me what he was about to do, we could have circumvented the rules so he didn't violate them, but he did. Oh, so really, we're justifying that had he come to me, we could have cheated better, but he didn't, so he got caught. He went to Aga Khan's private island, and Aga Khan IV is the Prince Shah Karim Al Husani, also known as Aga Khan IV. And he is a powerful world leader in the Caribbean Khan's Island is in the Caribbean. He owns his own private island, and the first violation was you're not allowed to collect gifts from family member. For anybody who isn't a family member, then they changed it so you couldn't accept gifts from anybody who isn't a family member or a friend, but friend is so ambiguously defined, and the commissioner, the ethics commissioner, said she couldn't even get friend to work for him. So he violated it by taking a gift from somebody who wasn't even a friend, and then he violated it by, when you're out of the country on a recreational trip, you're not allowed to involve yourself in political conversations and meetings. And they had 3 other world leaders there, and he didn't talk at all, but he sat and listened into this conversation. And it's just funny that he's the biggest advocate against political collusion, but he sits here and takes political handouts from someone and sits in on collusion conversations and pretends as if that's never the case. I think that is definitely my last point on how he's a living contradiction, but I don't know. What's your any responses on that?
I said everything I have to do. So I think for some reason maybe he's promoting the best of Canada, not the best of himself. But
That is how it should be.
It's how it should be, but he needs to be careful what he promotes for himself.
But you also got to remember the promotion of what Canada wants doesn't change.
No. But the promotion of what Justin Trudeau wants changes when he accepts his gift from Mr. Connor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
I think he's a funny guy. I follow him on Instagram, you know. Oh,
boom.
well.
Boom.
Yeah.
So the last and final point is that, you know, does him and his movement cause a problem? Well, it definitely causes an unruly division that generalizes people in a very dangerous way. On this, I take the Jordan Peters approach, who is a Canadian professor who's going through political turmoil and also praise at the same time, because he's realizing that there's a large majority that stands behind what he says, but an even louder minority that villainizes him. And please, he's got a book coming out that I wish I had the time to read, but it's just all about how to be a better human and a better social member of society, and it all is about loving your neighbor and everything else. And also just listen to his Joe Rogan podcasts. I mean, he is so smart and so well spoken that it's to his detriment, because people are too dumb to comprehend what he's saying. It's funny how many times he'll bring up philosophers and I know what he's saying, but people don't have a clue, and I think that's where he gets himself into trouble. But I want to take his approach on this concept that, you know, we shouldn't be defining individuals by their individual group identity at all. We shouldn't be identifying Bill, your neighbor, by him being a white guy or him being a black guy or him being a guy altogether. That should mean nothing on Bill. Bill's a jerk because he lets his dog pee on my yard and he doesn't fix his mulch and whatever it is. You're allowed to dislike Bill for Bill. But once we start defining Bill by his individual groups, that's where we start running into problems. I think the first case example, before I start setting forth the real foundation, is the Brett Weinstein situation going on at Evergreen College. There was a protest so for anybody who doesn't know what's going on, Brett Weinstein is just about one of the most liberal people you'll ever meet. He was the most self-defining person politically as a liberal, and he wanted to enforce that stance, or, you know, stand by that belief. So when Evergreen College has a day, and I'm going to find the name of it because it is quite comical. Oh goodness, it is. What were you gonna say?
Well, you were talking about books, and I read one book that really changed the outlook on how I think about life, and it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And I looked at just about embracing like the world we live in, and there's it's vulgar. He'll tell you how it is, and he'll tell you how to live. But there's one quote, and I fortunately found it, what I liked from it. But it is, he says in the book, once we embrace our fears, faults, and uncertainties, once we stop running from and avoiding and start confronting painful truths, we can begin to find the courage and confidence we desperately seek.
Which that totally supports the first point of how don't silence what fears you. Don't hide it. If you hide it, it continues. It persists. The way to fight ignorance, if you sit here and go, that man's just ignorant, how do you fight that ignorance besides having a discourse, by talking to them, facing that fear, not saying, whoa, shh, white man, stop talking. Stop talking. No, listen to them. And then make them listen to you. Change their mind. This is a fight against ideology, not against people, individuals, and groups, which is the biggest, I think, takeaway. But the point, how this causes an unruly division. First, I want to point out how funny it is that the Canadian government, just like we have Democrats and Republicans, instead of calling them Democrats and Republicans, they legitimately flat out just have liberals and conservatives, which makes it so much easier for people to take anybody that isn't a liberal and put them in a box and define them as a Nazi or a racist or whatever. This makes it so much easier, and I think this kind of fuels the issue. But it also goes to Democrat versus Republican. That in and of itself, saying, you know, if you're a Republican, you believe this on gun rights, this on abortion, this on immigration, this on climate change. The second you start doing that, you're the problem. Because at no point does my belief on gun rights in any way affect my belief on abortion. They are so not related. They're only related by, you know, your dad telling you you're a Republican and this is what we're... So is the second you bury the old nomenclature of party division and just approach an issue and try to have a logical, rational debate about it, you know, that's where, you know, this political division at least is really rooted. But, I forgot to talk about this one too, so just a fun concept, how he says that, like a contradicting part, he says, I don't think it's the government's business to tell women what she should or shouldn't wear. But he also believes that I do think the government should have a say in what a parent does or doesn't inject in their kid. Like, how does that logic not fit over? I agree. The government shouldn't have anything to say about women, but they also shouldn't say about anything in parenting a kid. But, sorry, that point. So, you must be a Democrat, you must be a Republican. This whole concept immediately dissolves the middle ground. Exactly, I'm neither. Do you know how many times people are like, you're a Republican? Why? Because I don't want to be a Democrat? Because I don't want to be a liberal? Why can't I just be a human that is rational and takes on logical equations and computes them out its own way? And so this whole idea silences a discussion and a discourse with the other. And we have a problem here where, you know, it's so easy when the other is, you can villainize them by just saying you're a Nazi. Because there's a symbol, there's a swastika. The second you have a swastika, we know you're the alt-right. It's so self-defining, we know. Well, what's the smoking gun of a liberal, an alt-left? Somebody, you know, Steve Crowder in his show, they went and did one of those cryptid apps, found a liberal activist group that the word, you need to go find this on YouTube. It's insane. They're talking about, you know, it's one of them's a transvestite. I don't even know what the transgender human being. The other
community.
Right. And the others were just pissed off liberals. And they were handing around shanks and hammers and knives because they were just about to go attack to bring awareness. And they got these people arrested. They brought the light to this issue, and the news wanted nothing to do with it. They were just like, hey, you know, at what point, so it's just interesting that we have situations where we have these people, we want to ignore that there's an alt-left, that could ever exist, but they're there. And when they do exist, one, we ignore it, but two, we don't have a smoking gun like a swastika. We have nothing to define them by. So we have liberals that could sit here and go, you're a Nazi, punch a Nazi, you're a Nazi. And it's easy to identify. Well, you're just he has a swastika tattooed on him, or he said this. Okay, well, what's the measurement of an alt-left? There isn't one. So that grays the area of like, well, no, you just can't talk. Like, you just, I don't want to listen to you, so you can't talk. You're the problem. Right. And so this is where we have these generalizations. Now, this is where the case gets gooey and fun. Brett Weinstein, liberal professor at Evergreen State College, and they have a day. It's called Day of Presence / Day of Absence. This day is to preserve how oppressing white people are, and that anybody who isn't white deserves a day without them. And this liberal professor who was told he wasn't allowed to come to school and teach, which he's getting paid for, and the students that he's supposed to be taught that are white are not allowed to come to school. He just spoke out against this. But because this is tradition of the school, and you saying that means it represents something way worse, if you could follow the story on how this blew up on this man, your mind would be blown. He had to move. He had to hide his family. He lost his job. I mean, the whole thing blew up. Now, he got to sue Evergreen State College, and there was a settlement that, none of us will ever know, but it doesn't take away from the fact, and I beg of you, listen to the Joe Rogan podcast where he's on. He's also on with, hit two birds with one stone. Listen to Jordan Peterson and Brett Weinstein on Joe Rogan, and it's just crazy hearing how progressive he is. Nobody's defined themselves more as a progressive. And this man lost his job because he didn't want to skip work or have students skip class. Because that, even though it's white people and it's justified, it still is a division. It still defines people as another. And that's the problem. Somebody like him or myself who's just trying to be liberal and, accept everybody, yeah. That means you got to accept me too. You can't be telling me I can't come to class. So I just found that to be funny, and like Jordan Peters said, this is kind of murderous to what they're pushing. If this is pushed to its absolute limit, this silence and disdain for the other, it can become murderous. I don't know. It's just
rolling off of that. You presented a very good point of there should be no division. Like Trudeau in Canada, that division.
But there is a division. Him defining there's a division puts a division.
Trudeau in Canada putting the non-binary types in, starting to divide more people, but it's also inclusive. So there's such a fine. What is that fine? The fine line of what can and can't be done.
Right. That's
I don't know.
exactly
I have
right.
Good luck.
Well, you have to sit here and there's white privilege. Yeah. Okay, you've got two things there. A legitimate privilege that a group has that is seen, everyone acknowledges, and is beyond problematic, is very deadly. Mm-hmm. That privilege exists, and it needs to be fought. But what's the rhetoric outcome of just broadly defining white privilege and then automatically damning anything that has that tag? So
I don't want to have that tag.
Hell no. But we have it. Sadly, no one that had to do with raising me, nobody that had to do with the people that had to do with raising me, nobody that had to do with the people that had to do with them, ever owned a slave, nothing. My grandparents were immigrants, first immigrants, One's hiding from the Nazis in Greece. The other one just came over here as a fresh baby trying to figure it out. And at the same time, we're going to say, no, you also aren't allowed to talk. You're also racist, and you need to be held accountable because somebody that we're going to encompass you with did wrong over 1,000 years ago. 300 years ago. But we can't also deny that was recent enough that it holds significant
it's valid.
Social points today. And so, like Jordan Peterson was saying, white privilege rides on a variance of collective guilt. So when you define the oppressing first you define an oppressing category. Then you make a member of that guilty category. And at that point then, so once you create this guilty category, you could just start attributing people to that guilty category, and then you and the rest of the members of that guilty category are judged as a unit. So I'm told I have white privilege, and then I'm also held accountable for the people with torches and the people that are driving cars through peaceful Black Lives Matter protests. Like, why? I've done nothing. I've done nothing but be raised in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio, try to stay in my lane and go to college and go to law school, and yet you guys find it necessary to encompass me in this group and then also hold me accountable and hold that guilt over me. along with them, which is just really problematic. And then finally, when you begin telling people to not involve themselves, to back off, or to be silent because they're privileged, if you do this hard enough and long enough, you end up with a Trump. And you know what? It doesn't matter where I landed on the debate. I can be the first, alongside many, to say that I'm definitely not happy with where we're at. I'd love to get that tweeting Cheeto out of the Oval Office. And this is the result of angry people.
Yeah.
And also, just not the result of angry people, it's this divided 350 million people. We had two choices. Two choices. That's insane. And then when we say, all right, if you get 15% backing, you're allowed to join the debate with these two. Gary Johnson does that, and we still say he has the legal right now, and we still don't let him debate on a global or on a national platform with these two. So this is the result. You can't just the goal should be not to silence, not to shut up, not to imprison. Let them speak, let them be loud, and teach and learn. Like, that's the key, is don't silence that ignorant person who's got a bunch of dumb stuff to say. Let them say the dumb stuff and then teach them. Make them learn. At some point, you're going to meet, somebody, I was talking with someone, they're like, no, race starts at the home. Like, being racist. You're probably very right. Unless you had, like, if your mom's telling you that Mexicans are mean, you're going to start thinking Mexicans are mean. But at the same time, it's that individual's duty to go out and ask why. Meet as many people as you can. That person meets enough Mexicans to realize that mom's been wrong. Mom has no idea what she's talking about. And the only way to dissolve that innate rooted racism and bias and problem is by allowing it to persist, but then also teaching it why it's wrong. I don't just touch this cup when it's hot and go, ow, it's hot, and then just go like, all right, we need to eliminate everything hot everywhere. No, you never will. You just know that, one, you need to avoid something hot, or two, make it cold. Make it cold. We're not going to put all the hot stuff in a box one day and just go, all right, that half of the country's all the hot people, over here's all the cold people. No, that's not where change begins.
Sometimes I drink warm coffee, and sometimes I drink iced coffee.
Exactly. What's wrong with being the middle of the road coffee? But you're not allowed today.
No.
Not allowed to be that.
So,
it's just the idea that as a member of a culture, you're somehow responsible for the past sins of that culture is a very Western ethos. And every group has done these sins. And it's just crazy that it's having these implications that it does.
We rambled a little bit, but that was necessary.
It definitely was. So I guess in conclusion,
you teach me.
Right.
I'll teach you.
Boom. So
I'm here to learn.
Kyle.
I literally.
Is Trudeau and what he represents a problem?
What he represents? Personally, or as the Canadian Prime Minister?
Listen, he's no Trump. So,
no. I think he's
You
good.
can make an argument that Trump politically is his own entity and you hate him as a person. That's not what I'm talking about at all. How could you
Justin
hate Trudeau
Trudeau
on his own?
No.
I
would not hate him on his own.
Hippie,
where he's going,
skipping flowers,
is walking a tightrope that probably shouldn't be walked. Can I go with that?
That's a well.
But if he does it the right way,
that is perfect. I think
if he makes it
exactly
across the
my stance.
tightrope, good for him. He's done well. He's included everyone that needs to be included and should be included. And
so what's the end of the tightrope? What is he walking towards? That you're saying if he makes it there,
we'll see if he gets reelected.
He's that was another thing that I was reading about, that he probably most likely will. But
I think that
what's the social thing at the end of the line that him putting people in jail for not saying Z, him being
I think
politically
Justin Trudeau would make it to the end of the tightrope, like you just said, if people recognize not everyone is the same. People are different. People choose to be different. Listen to them. Do not feel like you are inferior or superior to them. and just get the fuck along with each other.
Exactly.
Sorry I had to put that in a weird way, but that's how it is. That's just how people are nowadays. Some people, this is like
Well,
like
so
the
hold
gym,
on.
like the
Yeah.
gym douche. There's everyone in the gym knows a gym douche. And I go to the gym, I might be him for all I fucking know. But I watch these people, and some of them are big, and they can lift a good amount of weight, and they do these exercises I've never done. I don't sit there and be like, wow, like we should put him out of the gym because he's bigger than me. I'm sitting there and saying, wow, I should do that. That would better me.
Well, that's
So
what
not
it
to
comes
the
down
whole
to,
point.
is you need to remind yourself, and this is where it gets lost with political
Transition.
liberals,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't stride to,
Outcast.
right, no. We shouldn't strive for equality of outcome, because in a communist country, that'll only bring hell. Marxism shows it every time again. Look at, we could go on for days of the examples. But what it should be is you should strive for equal opportunity. You're
Yeah.
never going to get equal, and that's where
also-
the conflict is.
Yeah,
Is we
also-
want liberals want equal outcome. Taking some, if go ahead. I
Sorry,
get
it
to-
just goes back to that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You win some, you lose some. And I think that's the point of this in general.
Right.
You will win some, you also lose some. Ask the
What's the guy's name? I can't remember. The guy who's the richest man in the world now today, who owns Amazon. That man works his ass off. He works hard. No one works harder than him. He's always making the most progressive move business-wise. And if we've all agreed as a society that we need to live in a capitalist society because that's what works best, at least for now, and this is the game that we're going to play, if that's the case, you can't... Freedom... You should have the freedom to not play the game, to not do so well at the game, to
fall off.
fail at the game just as much as you have the opportunity to be the best at the game, to win the game, and to look at somebody like him who is a mogul, is the most wealthy person in the world, and go, we need to, this outcome's way too, that is doing a disservice to his work ethic, what he's been able to build, and you will never get the most out of people if we go, oh no, come back down here, you're doing too well, so the concept that I wanted to take from what you were saying is it should never be equality of outcome, but the goal for everybody should be equal opportunities, because that's certainly what we don't have today.
Yeah.
But that should be our goal. So that's our goal. That's what we think should
I'll
be
support
strided
whatever
for.
you want to do.
But I want to come back to the overall question. Is what he's doing now, the whole slew of things, from putting people in boxes, contradicting himself, dividing people, is that a problem? Do I think it's a detrimental problem? No. But is it a problem?
No.
You don't think it's a problem? You don't
That's-
think taking someone's kid's a problem?
That's their society. That's what they want to be.
But now it's affecting our society. When New York City
But
starts
I don't-
adopting
I don't believe-
those laws,
I don't believe we'll adopt the law of taking kids.
did you believe that we would start throwing businessmen in like contempt and holding them liable for breach of contracts and business?
I think there's laws that will get them out of it. That you can't walk in there and you just didn't know.
Wall Street's in New York City.
I also
which means
don't believe.
Wall Street's now susceptible to
Oh yeah. There's a
to
slew of
abide by
problems.
these nuts standards.
Trudeau, what he's doing. Sure, for Canada, America, no. Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
that's
Hey,
Canada.
That's their problem.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to take the perspective of a Canadian. If I was a Canadian, I wouldn't be happy, but I'm not a Canadian, so hey, I'm an American.
Canadians
not
are very nice.
happy. Exactly.
Good for them.
Well, I think we did well. Go Eagles, the Super Bowl.
Go Birds.
Let's get
Trump.
that.
March our veterans
March.
down the street. I would much appreciate that.
Yeah, seriously, just do
Yeah.
that. And
Justin Trudeau.
hats off to you for trying, man.
Yeah. Stop elbowing women.
Yeah, don't leave that out.
If you don't get that joke, look it up. If you did.
He's elbowing people in Parliament.
Yep.
All right, guys, have a good one. Thank you. I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.